Suella Braverman is set to make a major speech in Washington, D.C., taking aim at the United Nations Refugee Convention.
Yes, the Home Secretary is expected to call for the key legal document to be rewritten for modern times and to declare that no migrant crossing the Channel to Britain has a good cause for illegal entry.
However, the Refugee Council and the Labour Party argue that the UK should instead be concentrating on addressing the record asylum system backlog. The number of migrants arriving via small boats edging ever closer to 24,000 coming into Britain this year.
Well, let's get the thoughts of David Dunn, Professor in International Studies at the University of Birmingham. Very good to see you this afternoon. So we're expecting for Suella Braverman in the speech in Washington this afternoon to say that 70 years have passed since this convention was agreed. She's going to say we live in such different times, it perhaps needs to be rewritten. What do you make of that?
Well, I think her comments reflect the changing nature of the world. In 1951, there were estimated to be 2 million refugees in Europe who needed to be resettled. The estimates now are that there may be 780 million people who could claim asylum on that basis. If you look at Africa, the population of Africa has doubled in the last 20 years to 1.4 million, just below that, and is estimated to double again between now and 2060. So there are millions of people living in areas of the world where there are no economic prospects, where there is liberal regimes. So being gay, being a woman is a problem and qualifies you under the present system to claim asylum elsewhere. The ease of travel across the Mediterranean and across the Channel means that they now have a means of presenting themselves. Obviously, those numbers mean that we can't offer asylum in the same way. And that's true in America, which is why she's in the United States. They have a massive problem with their southern border. It's a huge political issue in the upcoming presidential election, as it is in Europe and elsewhere. So migration linked to population growth is the challenge that she's talking about today.
Yeah, and I think she's sort of identified at least 780 million people effectively on the move across the globe. But just to take it back to the United Nations, we understand she's likely to say that the Convention 1951, an incredible achievement of its age, but in need of reform 7 decades on. But I suppose you could say the same about the United Nations itself. The trouble is, that's all we've got at the moment.
Well, indeed. And reforming the United Nations, the Security Council, the General Assembly, any aspect of it, and reforming this agenda, when, of course, the majority of states in the United Nations will probably be supportive of it, is a difficult ask. But and it begs the question as to whether certain states will seek to bring out a new interpretation of that rather than get agreement at the United Nations itself. But it's a very different world to the one in which that convention was drafted. Yeah. And say the challenge of population growth is the main driver of that.
David, this is tough rhetoric, isn't it? But is it actually anything more than that? Because this convention, it took decades to put together. Various countries needed in order to sign up for this convention. This isn't really something that the UK can just go out alone and do.
And I think that also is at play here. We're clearly entering the phase of a general election campaign, and making statements like this play to the Conservative Party's base support, suggesting that the problem isn't with government policy, it is with the convention, it is with the inadequacies of the global system, rather than the failure of the UK government to process the asylum seekers or to stop the boats crossing the Channel.
And what reception do you think she'll get in Washington, D.C.? It's a Democrat town. It's a Democrat presidency at the moment. Is she likely to get a fair hearing?
Yes, but the American Enterprise Institute is a Reaganite Republican bastion in Washington. So where she is speaking, they will have lined up a sympathetic audience for her. And in terms of the wider American debate, migration, asylum across the southern border is a huge issue. And therefore, in a sense, she'll be speaking to people who are receptive to her message.
David, as ever, thanks for joining us with your assessment. And, of course, we'll be carrying that speech from Washington a little later. Thanks very much indeed.